Sleep is one of the most important parts of dog behavior, yet almost no one treats it that way. We obsess over walks, we obsess over training, we obsess over mental stimulation, we obsess about socialization, but we barely think about sleep. And that's exactly what I want to talk about in this video. But before we get into the good stuff, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Junior, behavior nerd and founder of Paws of Wisdom, where I help overwhelmed and burned out owners make sense of their chaotic and over-the-top dogs through a regulation-first lens. And today, I want to talk about why sleep is one of the most underrated parts of dog behavior and why it matters more than you actually think. Let's get into it. As I mentioned earlier, walks, training, stimulation, and socialization, things like that, end up getting all of our attention. And what ends up happening is we spend all our time focusing on managing stimulation, managing behavior, but we don't spend any time managing rest and recovery. And recovery matters so much more than people realize. There's a saying that's actually stuck with me for a while, which is a dog's behavior is only as good as their sleep. And it's such an important thing to matter because sleep is such an important thing and people don't realize how much it can actually influence their dog's behavior. Most adult dogs should be sleeping about 16 to 18 hours every single day. And while some dogs have no trouble achieving this at all, there are many dogs out there who don't even get anywhere close to this, and it shows up in their behavior. Sleep is so important because it allows the body to regulate, it allows the body to relieve stress, tension, arousal, frustration, chaos. It supports recovery, it supports growth, and there are huge mental benefits to this as well. A dog that's getting enough sleep throughout the day is far more able to process the world around them. They're not carrying around a backlog of stress. They're able to think more clearly, they're able to make better choices, they're able to listen when needed, and they're far less likely to react to every single small thing. In general, dogs that actually sleep enough throughout the day are easier to manage, they're easier to live with, they're easier to train. And that's exactly why, in my opinion, sleep alongside regulation should be one of the first things that we look at when trying to work with behavioral issues. Because lack of sleep doesn't show up as tiredness, it shows up as behavior. When dogs aren't getting enough sleep, chaos starts to build. And when I'm talking about sleep, I'm not talking about broken sleep or the kind of sleep where your dog wakes up anytime there's movement around or they hear a noise. When I talk about sleep, I'm talking about that restorative rest, that you need an earthquake to wake your dog up, the kind of sleep where their eyes are rolling into the back of their heads and they're snoring. That kind of sleep is what actually does something for the system. When a dog isn't getting enough of that kind of sleep, you can see the chaos slowly building and leaking out into daily behavior. You have to imagine sleep like a reset button. When your dog sleeps throughout the day, stress levels should drop, arousal should come down, frustration, tension, all of the chaos in their body should slowly bring itself back down. But without that restorative rest, or without enough of that restorative rest, those levels don't have a chance to balance out and reset, not even overnight. A lot of dogs can go to bed stressed and wake up in the same state. And this is why a lot of owners might feel like no matter how much they do throughout the day, no matter how many walks, no matter how much stimulation, no matter how much exercise and running around or whatever, no matter how much activity that they do throughout the day, their dog still feels chaotic. And that's purely because all that chaos that has been building up just does not get a chance to come back down. That system doesn't get a chance to reset. And when the system can't reset, when chaos stays on the inside, it starts to leak out into behavior. Dogs that are already chaotic on walks start to become more reactive and overwhelmed outside. Dogs that are overstimulated outside start bringing that chaos and stimulation indoors as well. And suddenly you're starting to deal with chaos everywhere, not just outdoors. And when that system is in that state, training becomes harder, management becomes harder, life generally becomes harder. Without sleep and recovery, without proper restorative sleep that brings that chaos down, and without recovery, that system stays on a high. And you'll start to see behaviors creep in like increased reactivity, poor impulse control, your dog making worse choices. You'll start seeing them barking more indoors and out the window. You'll start to see increased overstimulation at the smallest things. All of these things may look like behavior problems, but at the end of the day, they stem from a lack of sleep. Okay, Junior, we get it. Sleep's important. Sleep influences behavior. But how do I actually improve sleep? And I'm glad you've asked, because here are 3 ways that you can go on to improve your dog's sleep throughout the day. So, firstly, is constant and predictable sleep patterns. Dogs learn how to sleep the same way they learn to do everything else, through patterns and consistency. So, therefore, we need to create predictable and consistent patterns throughout the day where they actually sleep. One of the biggest reasons dogs struggle to sleep or have broken sleep throughout the day is purely because their sleep routine is inconsistent. Sleep happens randomly, it's constantly interrupted. There's no clear patterns or signs when it's actually time to switch off. And because of this, dogs never really learn how to settle into that sleep. By creating that consistent and predictable routine where we let them know that this is when you sleep, we give dogs that signal that it's actually time to sleep and switch off. And over time, it stops becoming something that we chase, something that we're managing, and starts becoming a way of life. When dogs understand, okay, this is my rest time, they start to settle faster. They stop trying to resist sleep. They start sleeping for longer and they start having that restorative rest because they can finally settle into it. Number 2 is creating safe havens for sleep. Some dogs actually have a really good daily routine that, in theory, should allow them to sleep. But the issue is they don't have anywhere to sleep. Now, I'm not talking about sleeping in the living room or sleeping on the sofa. When it comes to safe havens, I'm talking about areas where they can fully shut off. And these areas tend to be away from chaos, away from stimulation, away from distractions, other pets, children, chaos, movement, and even ourselves. Because at the end of the day, a lot of owners don't realize that we can be a distraction. A lot of dogs that sleep in living rooms or that sleep on sofas tend to get disturbed every time their owner gets up, moves, or does something. And even though it might look like these dogs are sleeping throughout the day, it's never really as deep of a sleep as we think. This is why I always recommend having a dedicated safe haven where your dog can fully go off to and sleep and not be disturbed. Ideally, that should be in a separate room away from the noise and chaos of the house. And this doesn't mean not to have your dogs in the living room or not to have them on the sofa. You can do whatever you want. But having a dedicated safe haven away from the chaos, away from sounds, somewhere your dog can go to when, not only when they're tired, but when life gets a bit chaotic, can do wonders for their sleep. And finally, the third thing that you can do is create a predictable wind down routine for your dog. And this kind of falls in with number 1 of having a consistent and predictable routine, right? But by having a consistent wind down routine, this is how you signal your dog it's time to go to sleep. You have to think of a wind down routine like Like you've just finished work and your wind down routine is a series of things that you do to take yourself from work mode to home mode. Your dog needs the same thing to help them transition from activity, from chaos, to being able to just relax and sleep. For many dogs, after activity, they're usually left to their own devices. And when that activity brings that arousal level to an 8 or brings that chaos to an 8, that chaos stays at that level until they can bring that down. And for a lot of dogs, they struggle to do that solely by themselves. This is why dogs pace around, bark at noises outside, or just seem restless because they still have that chaotic energy in their system. By providing dogs with a wind down routine that allows us to shift everything down, we prepare them to actually sleep. So, as you can see, when you start combining all of these pieces together, a consistent daily routine with a predictable wind down routine, and providing a safe haven where your dog can retreat to once it is time to sleep, you give their system the chance to fully switch off so they can just sleep. When a dog is able to finally sleep and get that deep restorative rest, everything becomes easier. Remember, supporting sleep will help their whole system function better. And finally, if you want to learn more on improving sleep, on regulation, reducing stress, or learning why your dog behaves the way they do, I've linked my free Paws of Wisdom regulators community down in the description below, so make sure you check that out. It's a space for burned out and overwhelmed owners who just want to make sense of their chaotic and over-the-top dogs through a regulation first lens. Inside you'll find the Regulators Resource Vault, you'll find the Deep Dive Library, and more educational resources that will help you understand what's going on underneath the chaos. But if you're ready to move on from understanding into action, you'll also find the Paws of Wisdom Detox protocol on there as well. That's my structured step-by-step system designed to help you actively reduce daily chaos, reset your dog's baseline, lower the unholy trinity, create better habits, and rebuild regulation. And if you're looking for deeper personalized guidance and accountability, you can check out the Regulators Academy as well, where I help owners build regulation first systems tailored to their dog and their lifestyle. And finally, thanks for watching. If this has helped you understand your dog even just a little bit, make sure you hit that like button just so other owners can find this video to help them out as well. And let me know down in the comments what other things are you struggling with, what other videos would you like to hear more topics on. And that covers today's video. Until next time, friend, I'll see you soon.